What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I am back for yet another album review for you guys. This one is going to be a bit more underground this time around, as I read up about this band and thought, you know what? Why don't I give them a fair crack at an album review and give them a little bit of support, as I am here to talk about the 6th studio album from Swedish melodic progressive death metal masters in Mourning, titled The Bleeding Veil. Brief little history lesson about In Mourning is that they formed back in 2000, originally as a more gothic metal band. Before the end of the decade, they decided to change up their sound a little bit into more progressive, melodic death metal, kind of very reminiscent of bands like Opeth and Bellacore, Insomnium, Amorphous, and even a little bit of the Gothenburg style of stuff with like Amon Amarth and so on and so forth, and kind of mashing it all together into a unique package. And this is their 6th studio album, so now keep in mind, this is actually my first time listening to this band, and let's find out what I thought. So we kick things off with the track Sovereign, starting off with these like dark, clean guitars that kind of have a bit of a Gojira vibe to start things off. Then a heavy riff coming through afterwards with some beautiful guitar melodies to follow. A chugging part shows up that reminds me a lot of Morbid Angel. I don't know what it is with albums I've been hearing lately where I hear this like Morbid Angel vibe going on with certain riffs that they write. The drum work on this track, it certainly reminds me a lot of the great Martin Lopez, formerly of Opeth, currently in Soen. Blast beats even appear, some somber, clean guitars, clean vocals show up to give the song a sense of dread before it gets doomy, and then a beautiful lead section to kind of keep that feeling of darkness and dread alive to kind of conclude the track. Then we get to At the Behest of Night, more beautiful, somber, clean guitars before the song kind of gets into a bit of a marching beat, and here's where the Opeth vibe starts coming in. I hear some Opeth-inspired riffs going on in this track. Even some more chugging riffs that come along before another wonderful lead. Clean vocals return as it leads into more of those chugs, and while the riff is chugging along, the drums get a bit wacky at times with its timing, and then a marching blast beat towards the end to conclude this track. And the music video, I listened to this song while watching the music video. The music video itself is a bit sad, yet quite disturbing at times. Watch the music video and you'll get what I mean. Solitude and Silence, the next track, starting off with a heavy riff that's playing along to some wonderful melody, similar to something I would hear from Amon Amarth. Clean vocals briefly appear before the song marches along and the low growls show up. And there are parts on this song that remind me a little bit of Mastodon to some degree. A nice tapping section that would remind me of something I would hear in, like, Devin Townsend or something. More of those Morbid Angel-esque chugging riffs come along, and it ends off with that epic chorus that you would hear throughout the whole track. But now, let's talk about my favorite song of the album, Thorn Walker. You have this like sci-fi inspired guitar part while the heaviness is picking up to begin the song. And the main riff, again, very Opeth-esque. Fast blast beats, and the song gets really epic and bombastic. Something similar to what I would hear in a band like Dissection, for example. There's even some thrash moments that show up here to kind of add a little bit more energy to the song before it calms down to clean parts in the vocals that remind me of the song Hours of Wealth by Opeth off of Ghost Reveries. You'll kind of get my comparison if you listen to this part. Then it gets into a beautiful yet doomy lead, and then it gets back to that like Opeth-style chug. More of those epic blast beats, followed by that thrash energy that I heard in the earlier in the song. There's even some beautiful, like, vocal harmonies going on, like big vocal rounds, kind of like something I would hear from, like, Gentle Giant, or even for a recent band like Haken, where they have a lot of members singing along. I thought that added a nice, beautiful touch to the track. And then it finishes off with yet another beautiful lead before it goes back to that sci-fi beginning. So this song had a lot going for it, and I absolutely loved it for that reason. Blood in the Furrows. Again, we get back to some more beautiful, somber, clean guitars, as it's followed by riffs and melodies that kind of fits in like a slower Mastodon song. The clean vocals start things off while the song is building itself up. And then when the screaming vocals come in, the song gets epic real quick. And the drum work here reminds me a lot of Braun Daler of Mastodon, with the accenting going on with the cymbals and how every other snare hit he's hitting one of the toms. The bass line stands out on this track as it's just going along, and then the solo coming in, and it's one of the most emotional solos on the entire album. And then even after that, we get another beautiful lead section, and then towards the end, the vocals get almost brutal because the register is much lower in the death growls towards the end, as the double bass in the drum kit just going absolutely insane. Lights on the Mire, the penultimate track, starts off with some epic tremolo riffs with a chugging riff on top of that while the drums once again go wild. And the speed picks up as the riff continues to chug away, similar to something I hear in like Avenged Sevenfold, just a little bit. And then during the chorus, you hear the start of yet another beautiful lead. And then while the drums are building up towards the middle, a soft, beautiful lead comes in that's something similar to, like, Comfortably Numb by Pink Floyd. It's that kind of level of emotion and beauty attached to that solo. More of the tremolo riffing and the chugging riff from earlier. Then we get probably one of two solos on the album that has some technical execution going on, because this one, there's some more technical execution and shred, yet it keeps that emotional feel to it intact to make it not sound like absolute guitar wankery. It actually was well executed in terms of shred and emotion. And then to the closing track, Beyond Thunder, an epic yet somber beginning to the track before it slows down to doomy territory, similar to something I would hear from like a slower Hypocrisy song, which is ironic considering I just reviewed Hypocrisy last night, and it's kind of strange how I would hear an Hypocrisy type of riff and structure on this track. And while that riff's going along, it just, like I said, it feels like a slower Hypocrisy track. Kind of like the song The Fourth Dimension is probably a good comparison point. And then the riffs in the middle, once again carrying more chug. Then we get to the other solo of the album that just has so much happening. There's some sweep picking, more technicality, yet there's still emotion attached to it. And that's one of the biggest strengths that this album has with guitar solos. It's more about the emotion rather than the wankery than you would hear in like a lot of prog bands out there. And the song itself just continues to carry on like a feeling of life struggle on top of it. Then again, lyrically, as you go along with this album, it's dealing with struggles and pain and love and loss, death. It's seasons, very much similar to like what you would see in like Opeth lyrics to some degree. But yeah, overall, the production on this album was quite nice. I don't know who it was that produced this album, because not a whole lot of info has been spilled out about this album on like the Metal Archives, Metallum. But whoever was the producer did a fantastic job mixing everything. Nothing's weighing in on top of anything else. You can hear everything perfectly crisp. Maybe the one knock that I would have on this album is the fact that with the last track, I wish there could have been more in terms of like the songwriting and the riffs. That would maybe be the only thing that I would have any kind of complaint with, but that's a very, very minor complaint at best. Overall, this album, what is it with this year with making amazing metal albums? This one might end up being a top 10 contender, possibly, because there is so much going on here. There's plenty of heaviness, plenty of melody, beauty, some chug, some epic stuff. I mean, this album, for a progressive melodic death metal album, there is a lot going on here. There's some doomy moments, there's a bit of black metal moments, like in the song Thorn Walker. There's a little bit of thrash in that song too, and then there's some groove on top of it. So overall, since this might end up being a top 10 contender, I'm going to give this a 9.5 out of 10. For my first experience listening to this band in Mourning, I salute you guys. You guys put out a hell of an album, and this will end up being one of the best prog metal albums of the year, in my opinion. It's up there with like Mastodon and Soen and some of those bands that have put out some fantastic music. This might be a top 10 album of the year contender, but then again, I gotta go back and listen to everything and see what albums truly do reign supreme for me. For now, this would be in that conversation for top 10 of the year for me. But for those of you who have listened to it, what did you guys think of The Bleeding Veil by In Mourning? Let me know in the comments below, and until next time, horns high. I will see you guys very, very soon. It's about as good of an application we could get it to. It actually does. It actually looks really good. So now, pouring it all back into the pan. Ow! Pan's still a little hot. So let me get the oven mitt back on. Try and shake it around. And now we put it back into the oven for about 3 minutes to really kind of get that caramelized factor. So 3 minutes, and then we'll plate and it'll be time to eat. It's a moment of truth time. The finished product.